HBO's Game of Thrones prequel series, House of the Dragon, isn't expected to be released until 2022, but the cast and crew are already hard at work on the new show. Although the series is a prequel to HBO's very popular show that ended in 2019, House of the Dragon isn't expected to be too similar to Game of Thrones. And in today's video, we'll be going over exactly how these two shows are different. But before we get into the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on so you don't miss any of the new videos we post. HBO first announced the Game of Thrones prequel series in 2019, and it will take place 300 years before the events of Game of Thrones and follow the events of George R.R. Martin's Targaryen-centric book, Fire and Blood. House of the Dragon has received a straight-to-series order for 10 episodes. The studio then confirmed that the series will be debuting sometime in 2022 late last year, after sharing the first teaser, with the production starting this year. Interestingly enough, HBO did have another Game of Thrones prequel in the works before House of the Dragon was announced that also would have served as a Game of Thrones prequel, but was ultimately scrapped due to a troubling pilot. As the studio has already been getting fans hyped up for the new series, it seems that the House of the Dragon will stick around, showing new concept art and sharing when the series will finally go into production. Plus, this is a way to stick to the Game of Thrones franchise for a while. 2022 may seem like a long ways away, but fans can always relive Game of Thrones either from George R.R. Martin's books or by watching all 8 seasons on HBO Max or on digital. Now, the first obvious difference between the two shows is the pilot. As we stated, House of Dragons is based on Martin's Westeros history book, Fire and Blood, and will follow the rise of the House Targaryen, following Aegon's conquest, while also taking in the Targaryen civil war known locally as the Dance of the Dragons. It's a big dynastic struggle epic, you might say. The old King Jaehaerys I, also known as Jaehaerys the Wise, was the 4th Targaryen king of Westeros, after Aegon the Conqueror, then his sons Aenys and Maegor the Cruel. He appointed his son Balon as his heir instead of his eldest son, Aemon's daughter Rhaenys. But Balon died first, and so the line of succession passed to Balon's son Viserys. So we've already got a situation where Rhaenys has a legitimate claim to the throne, being the daughter of the eldest son of the king, while Viserys I is the son of the second oldest. That gets more complicated after the death of Viserys I, because while his beloved daughter Rhaenyra is the heir apparent, the lords, led by the late King's Hand and more recently father-in-law Otto Hightower, appoint her half-brother as King Aegon II. What follows is a civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons. For anyone who's yet to read George's latest tome, it's a pretty impressive prequel, with a broader focus than you might expect. It's not just exploring the Targaryens' history, with the show also showing the surprising origin stories behind different iconic houses, showing how King's Landing was built, and lots of references to the main series. We can see why HBO decided this was the best project to move forward with. The book also has some Lord of the Rings references, new conflicts, and some truly disturbing descriptions that really tap into George's former life as a horror writer. Based on this, we can tell it's going to be great, and has more than enough material in one book to last 10 seasons or more. A significant difference in the House of the Dragons that may make fans happy and could ultimately benefit the show in the long run is the ending. Game of Thrones ran for 8 successful seasons from 2011 to 2019, but the final season's ending attracted a lot of controversy and was widely disregarded as a successful ending by fans. The series was based on George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire book series, but passed the book's timeline in its later seasons, leading to an unknown finale that wouldn't be guided by the exact vision from the books. The upcoming series, House of the Dragon, depicts an era of Targaryen rule over 7 kingdoms, under King Viserys Targaryen. A major source of conflict will be between Viserys' younger brother, Daemon Targaryen, heir to the throne, and Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, Viserys' daughter, who is not heir due to her sex. The series will heavily draw from George R.R. Martin's novel Fire and Blood, which exists outside of the A Song of Ice and Fire series, and details the history of House Targaryen in Westeros 300 years prior to the reign of Daenerys Targaryen. Game of Thrones showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss won't be returning for the House of the Dragon, which may be feelings to fans as D&D were heavily criticized for their execution of the final season. House of the Dragon has a major benefit compared to Game of Thrones by going in with a solidified ending, and audiences are really just along for the ride. While both have a basis in Martin's novels, House of the Dragon's source material is a standalone novel, giving the history of House Targaryen. By contrast, Game of Thrones was based on a series that hadn't finished being written. By the time Game of Thrones reached season 5, George R.R. Martin still had a book yet to be released, which led to the showrunners taking their own course with the characters. House of the Dragon, on the other hand, may be more successful than Game of Thrones' last few seasons, because it will have the book to show adaptable material with an ending for which fans are already prepared. Game of Thrones' major controversy came from its rushed and disliked final season and story resolution expectations, but by virtue of being a prequel, House of the Dragon is a step ahead because everyone already knows how it ends, and thus can't be as great a source for controversy as Game of Thrones previously was. The only way House of the Dragon could get into hot water for its finale is if it took another direction that diverges from George R.R. Martin's history in A Song of Ice and Fire or Fire and Blood. Considering House of the Dragon is set hundreds of years before Game of Thrones, it likely won't end with Robert's Rebellion, since that event occurs only 17 years before Game of Thrones' first season begins, and instead could implement a newly crafted Westerosi tragedy of its era to end on. While most prequels to successful series and franchises don't carry high expectations of living up to the original, House of the Dragon will have a lot to bear on its shoulders, with fans seeing it as an opportunity for HBO to make up for the divided fan receptions of Game of Thrones Season 8. Considering there were petitions to remake the Game of Thrones final season because of how poorly it was received by fans, House of the Dragon may be the franchise's way of making amends to the audience. On the other hand, just because one already knows the ending doesn't mean it will be executed in a favored way. Nonetheless, there are high hopes for the House of the Dragon and its ability to translate the history of the Targaryens to our screens. Along with the hopeful ending, series star Olivia Cooke, who will play Alicent Hightower in the House of the Dragon, spoke about the new series in an interview and made one thing clear: there's going to be a big difference between the two shows in how violence against women is handled, and that the writers won't include certain topics anymore. In an interview, Cooke explained that the actor would have never taken the role of Alicent Hightower if it featured the type of violence that many accused in the first few seasons of Game of Thrones promoting. I wouldn't feel comfortable in being part of anything that has just egregious graphic violence towards women for no reason whatsoever, just because they want it to be tantalizing in a way that gets viewers, Cooke explained. I was lucky enough to read the prequel script before, and it has changed a lot from the first few seasons of Thrones. I don't think they'd be right in their minds to include any of that anymore. And Cooke also knows the pressure the show's under to perform from a fanbase expecting Game of Thrones level quality while also soothing the anger of many still not too happy with the series finale. I saw too many clips just being alive at the time, so I knew what was going to happen, Cooke said. What happened with Daenerys, I was okay with it because I was expecting it, but it's hard, you know? I'm a bit nervous about the new one. You're never gonna please everyone, so I've got to not listen to that stuff. Game of Thrones has been criticized for its depiction of sexual violence against characters, most often being women, and the series is also known to have a decent amount of nudity. However, based off of these statements, it seems as though times have changed, and the writers have taken note on how to better approach the scenario and to not make it all about degrading characters just to get viewers. With that said, that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching!